Yes, transformational outcome-based education grew out of outcome-based education itself. The original model of outcome-based education in America's schools, where I did all my work originally, was basically around academic education, all right? And what we began to realize is that more and more and more of what life was really requiring of young people in a changing dynamic world, this was back in the 1980s, it was demanding kinds of interpersonal abilities and other kinds of skills, self-directed learning, not just doing what the teachers assigned you to do. It changed the entire dynamic of what we meant by learning. So my colleagues and I, one step toward that was developing an approach that we called the action learning model, where students would take responsibility for creating a project and creating a problem to investigate, and then going out and doing the investigation, and then developing that into some kind of paper or design or model or whatever, and having their peers critique it and they critique their peers. It made the entire process of learning and education much more active, much more integrated. Then we finally got to the stage where we realized that it wasn't just the traditional curriculum and traditional subjects that should be guiding, learning and their thinking. What really was going to determine their success or not is how they dealt with life outside of school. What was happening in the world, and the world was changing dramatically. Everything we take for granted technologically today is just starting to happen in a major way back at that point, and our schools were completely ill-equipped to provide young people with those kinds of learning experiences. So what we developed within this process called transformational outcome-based education, which really was future-focused and life-focused, that's where the problems and the issues are. That's what we need to be learning about. Those are the problems we need to solve. Those are the challenges and opportunities you have. Now, what is it going to take on the part of the learner to be able to deal successfully with those challenges and opportunities, not just take tests out of books? Okay? So the action learning model helped facilitate this future focus. At the same time, the future focus said, these are the things young people really need to be equipped to do. So we redefined learning from just cognitive learning to performance learning, and then from performance learning into, can you perform in context, in a real situation under real demands? The example we often used was an airline pilot. Okay? Well, they study the manual. They could get 100 on the test for everything in the flight manual and not be able to fly an airplane. So you put them in an airplane and you teach them what the buttons are of everything and all the dials and everything that they have to do, so that they then know what to do in the airplane, but they still can't fly the airplane until they make the airplane fly. And then, see, when they teach you how to become a pilot, they teach you, on a nice sunny day where the weather is calm and nice and you can see where you're going to land. But what about at night in a storm with the wind blowing, at higher altitude airport? You have to be able to land that plane under those very challenging context conditions. So we were just trying to get people to realize they need to expand their thinking about learning. Mental processing is one-dimensional learning. You see it Okay, on paper, you see it in a book, you see it on a computer screen, and mentally, okay, things happen in here, and then they want you to put it on a test, or in a project, or write a paper about it. Okay, two-dimensional learning is when you can actually then learn some skills that you can apply with the content you've learned. Three-dimensional learning is when context in those situations, all right? What can you do? How adaptable can you be? How resourceful can you be? How creative can you be? How imaginative can you be when the context changes? Not just you have learned this skill and you only can do this skill this one way when the lights are on and the temperature in the room is good and everything is friendly and it's quiet and nobody's bothering you. Okay? So context is really the proof, the acid test of whether you're competent. And competence is the real test of whether the content you're learning is really that critical or important. So transformational OBE was we were attempting to be, and bring a three-dimensional picture of learning and teaching to the typical academic classroom. And we started with frameworks and models and things where teachers could do this with children who were 6 years old. And they could do this with children who were 10 years old. And they could do it with 13-year-olds. I mean, it just got more complex as the students matured, but they were doing these kinds of what we call life performance roles and life performance abilities all the time as they were being learners in school. Well, the skills are application in one sense, but being able to be adaptable and resourceful, I think the word we should use is versatile. Because if I can have a skill, but if I can't use that skill in different situations and different settings, I'm not versatile. Okay? I have to be able to do it at sea level on a nice sunny day, and I have to do it in the storm at night, etc. Okay? So I have to have a range of skill within that one skill area. The work that we were doing after this notion of transformational outcome-based education finally emerged is we realized that there were three kinds of outcome-based education. There was traditional outcome-based education that really focused on academic learning and processes, what we call transitional, which was leading to much more integration across subject areas, learning to do good analytic problem solving. That happens in math, it happens in science, it happens in social studies, it happens in English. It's not just a science skill or it's not just a math skill. So we were trying to bring much more integration in teaching, and integration in curriculum development to our work, all right? In terms of the kind of preparation teachers need to learn how to manage an active learning process where students are engaged in doing things, in pursuing problems, in building things hands-on, etc. I mean, a range of things, not simply lecture from books and lecture from content. They need practice. My personal point of view, that should be the focus of teacher training. Anybody can be 3 pages ahead of the students in a book. All right? All you have to know is a little about the subject, and you can stay 3 pages ahead. But to be a good teacher, to draw out understandings and interests and help to develop a skill in students and manage groups of students who are in learning teams, for example, or who are coaching each other. That's a whole different set of teaching skill. So teaching just isn't teaching in a box out of a book, okay? It's really about managing a learning process, orchestrating a learning process. And that's the direction that I really would want to push teacher training, and it's a direction I definitely would like to see curriculum development itself go. It's knowledge about how children learn. It's not knowledge of the subject. Okay. The world is filled with people who can study the subject. Okay? The world is filled with people who can solve math problems. Can they teach other people math? That's a different issue. Can they teach other people how to set up a clever and good science experiment? Or do they just read information out of the science book? Okay? So this is the skill of teaching, is what's important, not just the content. Okay? And the emphasis I see on, we have to have more teacher training about more content, they have to know their subjects, If the job of teaching is called transmit content, then that's what you want. If the job of teaching is to evoke learning and motivation and interest on the part of the students, that requires different kinds of skills.